Hi YouTube! Today we are going to be doing a deck tech video on Imoti, Celebrant of Bounty. It's an uncommon commander from Commander Legends that costs 3 green blue. It is a 3/1 Naga Druid with Cascade, and it gives spells that we cast with converted mana cost 6 or greater Cascade as well. So the aim of the deck is to play a lot of ramp so we can start casting expensive spells. We run out Imoti, it'll cascade from 5, and then we start playing expensive spells, so a lot of 6s, and that will then cascade often into ramp or draw, and then we start running out even more expensive spells, 9, 10, 11 costs, that when they can cascade into other spells that cost between 6 and 7 and 8 that will continue to cascade. So we're playing a lot of ramp, a lot of draw, and a lot of big spells in this deck. Because this is the first episode in the series, I want to just quickly walk through how I'm going to be doing these videos. So I want to go through the deck and the tactics and card inclusions, and to make it easier, I've separated all the cards into different categories. So we've got ramp and draw, a couple of other categories. These are high CMC spells and lands, and so I'm going to be going through the categories, explaining my thoughts and processes on why I've chosen to include these cards and why they'll be beneficial for the deck. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. The first category we're starting on is ramp. So we are obviously including Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. These are staples for Commander. Thought Vessel, because we are playing a lot of draw in the deck. And in testing of the deck, I found that cascading from 6 into ramp spells that fetch lands out the deck seemed to work very well and was very strong. So I've included Rampant Growth, Cultivate and Kodama's Reach, also staple green ramp spells. Search for Tomorrow, because this gets a land into play untapped immediately. Farhaven Elf, so we get a body as well. Jalanra, Caller of Wirewood. This is a mana dork, which is actually a partner commander from Commander Legends, but it can draw us cards when we cast 6 or greater CMC spells. So very, very nice as well. Then we've got Explosive Vegetation and Skyshroud Claim. These are going to fetch 2 lands into play. Skyshroud Claim specifically good because they come in untapped. And then 2 mana reducers, Croson Drover, which is found to be very strong in the deck because we can play earlier, we can start playing more than 1 6 CMC spells in the same turn. Thrix as well, reducing the cost of our expensive spells and preventing them from being countered. And Elvish Aberration, which is a very large mana dork and can also cascade because it does cost 6 CMC. So, moving on to draw, we are starting with See the Truth, which is card selection, but if we cascade into it, it is cast from our deck, not our hand, so it is a draw 3. Kiora is fantastic because we are playing a lot of heavy creatures and high CMC spells, so it'll draw us a lot of cards with its passive ability. It also is kind of ramp because you can use her ability to untap lands to run out bigger spells earlier. Fierce Empath and Treasure Mage will both find high CMC spells. Treasure Mage I've included because there are 2 very expensive artifacts in the deck, and Fierce Empath can just fetch any high CMC creature that we want. Then we're including Ugin's Insight, which is also a very strong card. We can cascade into it from a 6, and it gives us a massive scry, and then draw 3. So we're getting draw and card selection, as well as potentially using the scry to set up the next turn's cascade. Return of the Wildspeak is fantastic as either a win-con pump spell or a massive draw spell if we've got heavy creatures on the board. Shared Summons is a great spell because we can cascade into it and then it tutors 2 creatures to our hand. Tatyova can be cascaded into, and when it is on the board, if we ever cascade from 6 into ramp spells, then Tatyova is going to benefit us even more by drawing and gaining life on the ramp as well. And then Interpret the Signs and Prying Eyes are both 6-cost draw spells. They both cascade, and they give us card selection as well as Interpret the Signs being able to draw an insane amount of cards. Overflowing Insight is also fantastic. It's draw 7 for 7, so we cascade from 7. Just an all-round great card to include. And then Tree Shaker Chimera. It's a very big body. It has an ability that can win us the game, and if it is too big of a threat and our opponents remove it, we get to draw 3 after it dies. So also very good in the deck because it is going to be cascading and potentially winning and drawing. The next category is Other Strong Includes in the deck. So Lightning Greaves is a staple in most commander decks. This one especially because once Imoti is out on the board, she's got very low toughness and she's a very big threat because it turns our high CMC spells into even scarier spells. So giving her Shroud so she can't be removed as easily is definitely a plus. Including Swiftfoot Boots would also be fantastic. The Equip 1 is a downside, but including both would also be viable. Heroic Intervention is just a staple green card. This is actually a new card from Kaldheim, In Search of Greatness, and it is absolutely fantastic in this deck. We can cascade into it or we can run it out early for 2 mana, and if we are starting to build a board, this is going to let us build even more on our board because we are playing so many high CMC spells. If we can't play anything, we still get to scry, so fantastic card. And then Rashmi is also incredible in this deck. If Rashmi and Imoti are both out on the board at the same time, it is crazy value whenever we play a high CMC spell. So I find that using the Cascade trigger first is always preferable, and then the Rashmi trigger, so we cascade into something and then the Rashmi could potentially hit something after that as well. So very good synergy between these cards. They do similar things. I just feel like Imoti has more explosive turns once it gets going. The next category I'd like to go through is a category I find to be extremely important for this deck, and that is manipulating the top of the deck. So it's all good and well ramping into large spells that cascade, but if we are never going to land consistent cascades, it's going to reduce the consistency of the deck and the potential power level of the deck. So manipulating the top of the deck so that we can have more consistent and explosive cascading turns is very powerful once Emoti's out. And Brainstorm is the perfect example of a card for that. 1 mana instant, draw 3 and then put 2 back on top of your library. You can draw 3 and put, if you're about to play a 9 cost, you can put an 8 and a 7 cost from your hand on top of your deck. And then each of those will cascade after you cast the 9. So it's just very, very powerful. Ponder, again, we get to reshuffle the top and draw. So we'll typically reshuffle the top 3 and then draw the one we do not want to cascade into and leave something that's a very good cascade target on top. Worldly Tutor is obviously a fantastic card in most green decks, but specifically in this deck because we can pick exactly the creature we want at the top of the deck for when we cascade. Sylvan Library is unbelievably good. Similar to Worldly Tutor, it's a fantastic card in almost every green deck, and in this deck it's even more fantastic because every turn we can reshuffle the top. And then Precognition Field, it just lets us look at the top and exile the top card of our library if we don't want it, and it lets us set up our cascading turns a bit better and plan for them a bit better. So these cards are all fantastic. Including more of them in the deck is even more preferable. Just being able to manipulate the cascades is really fantastic. The next category is interaction. So every deck should include some interaction, so you can slow down your opponents, remove some of their very strong spells, protect your own spells. So including interaction is always very good. It is obviously in green always a good idea to include Beast Within and Croson Grip, but I have those cards in so many decks I wanted to move away and kind of embrace the cascading Imoti playstyle a bit more in this deck. So Profane of the Dead is a great one. If we cascade into this and we have an expensive creature on board already with high toughness, exploiting it and bouncing all of our opponent's creatures potentially is very strong. Cryptic Command, it is a counterspell, and I found that testing the deck with counterspells in it was underwhelming because landing a cascade into a counterspell that either fizzles or is ineffective was very dissatisfying. So I haven't included that many counterspells, but Cryptic Command and Sublime Epiphany cards like the modal counterspell cards are still very strong. So I've only included Cryptic Command, but the modal counterspells are the ones I would advise. Natural Reclamation is fantastic because it firstly is a removal spell, but it has Cascade. So if we go Cascade from a 6 into this, then we're going to keep cascading, which is very nice. Forceful Denial is the one other counterspell I did include in the deck, simply because it does have Cascade. So even if we can't find a target to counter with the counter, we can still cascade after this comes out. Meteor Golem's fantastic. We can fetch this with the Treasure Mage, and it's just fantastic removal. It's an artifact. It costs 7, so it cascades. It just does a lot. It's very good. Phyrexian Ingester, also incredibly good. Similar to Meteor Golem, however, Meteor Golem is the destroy a non-land permanent. Phyrexian Ingester is exile a non-token creature. So fantastic ability as well. It cascades from 7. It'll often be a huge threat when it hits the board. This very strong card. And then Brynelin the Moonkraken, 8 cost 6/8. This is another partner from Commander Legends. This card has been absolutely fantastic in this deck when I've tested it. It comes out, it returns a non-land permanent, and then every other spell you cast with 6 CMC or higher starts bouncing your opponent's permanents. And eventually it reaches the point where they're losing so many permanents that they can't keep up on board, and it just kind of snowballs the game. Especially because if we cast a 10 CMC and this is on the board, and that 10 CMC spell cascades into a 9 or 7, and that cascades, we get multiple bounces off this card. So very strong inclusion in the deck. The next category is where it comes down to your own preference. So these are the high CMC spells. We're playing a lot because we want to cascade a lot in this deck, but I found that including jank expensive spells actually just works in this deck. Imoti can turn all the jank you've never been able to play, cool expensive spells that just don't fit anywhere. Imoti can make them work. And when I was first building this deck, I included so many jank options and they just seem to fit together so nicely under Imoti. So I've included a lot of high CMC spells, 6 CMC up till 11. I've got some Eldrazi included in here, not the indestructible $40-50 spells, some of the more budget options. So if you wanted to take this deck to the next level, including those very high CMC Eldrazi's would be a good direction to take the deck. But we'll just go through this briefly and I'll just highlight some of the stronger cards in these high CMCs. So Sweet Gum Recluse from Commander Legends is fantastic because it does have Cascade and Flash, very strong. Conduit of Ruin is going to tutor an Eldrazi. Saheeli's Artistry is fantastic for cascading and making, and just it's great value. This is a win con when we have big spells out. See the Unwritten is fantastic because we are going to likely be able to get 2 very large creatures onto the battlefield for just 6, and we will Cascade. This is a strong spell in the deck because haste is often unexpected. Siege Behemoth is also another win con, so we can connect straight through to our opponents with our large creatures we are going to be playing. Deceiver of Form is another win con. We are playing deck manipulation, so we are going to be manipulating the top of our deck a lot, and when this is on the board and we have other creatures on board, manipulating something very large to the top of the deck can immediately win the game. So very strong win con, and I've noticed that people are very frightened of this card when it comes out. Maelstrom Colossus is absolutely fantastic. We get 2 Cascades from 8 when Emoti's out, and this often just is undeal-withable. I can't think of a better word. It fills the board with large creatures, or it ramps out very heavily. It's very strong. Aminato's Augury is also absolutely fantastic. We cascade from 8 and we get many permanents in play and instants and sorceries. It's fantastic. Endra's Forerunner is another expensive win con that will cascade. Ulamog's Crusher, this is just a large body. Myosian of Life's Web has been a star of this deck. As soon as we run it out, we've got plenty of large draw spells. We run this out from our hand. Cascading into it isn't great, but we can tutor for it, we can find it, we are ramping hard. If we get this out, this often just ends the game on the next turn because we just dump all our massive spells, all our massive creatures from our hand into play and swing out. It's a fantastic card in here. Artisan of Kozilek, another Eldrazi that fits pretty well. Desolation Twin, also a very large spell with a lot of value. And Pathrazer of Ulamog as the 11 cost. And very big body, very strong spell. So if you wanted to improve this deck, I've obviously included some of these more budget option Eldrazi, including the giant indestructible Kozileks and Ulamogs and all of those. It would make the deck stronger, but I don't feel like it's necessary. So before we get to the lands, there's one more category that I'm so excited for, and I feel like not enough people know about this category. This interaction between these creatures and Imoti is just absolutely fantastic. It has won me so many games. It catches opponents by surprise, and it's awesome to pull off. And that is using the Eldrazi's with Emerge. Emerge is a mechanic that is not too popular. So this is Wretched Griff, is a 7 cost 3/4 with Emerge that costs 5 and a blue. And Emerge says you may cast the spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the Emerge cost reduced by that creature's converted mana cost. And when you cast it, draw a card, and it is flying. So 7 cost for 3/4 that draws a card with flying. It's not great, but if we have an expensive spell out on the board and Emoti's on board, we can pay a blue or pay 0, sacrifice that creature, and cast this for its Emerge cost, and that will trigger Imoti, and it'll cascade from its CMC, which is 7. So we can get free cascades with Emerge, which is very powerful. So I've included almost all of the Emerge cards in these colors. So It of the Horrid Swarm, Vexing Scuttler, Lashweed Lurker, Elder Deep Fiend, and Drownyard Behemoth. These last two are especially good because they both have flash, so we can cascade from a high cost on our opponent's turns even for probably 0 mana or a couple of mana, so very strong. The interaction between Emerge and Cascade is just awesome, and I feel like not enough people know about this interaction. It's very fun. So the last section, we're not going to go too heavily into the mana base because you can kind of do what you want with the mana base. Obviously playing Command Tower, Myriad Landscape. Halimar Depths is a fantastic include because it lets us reshuffle the top when it comes in to set up a cascade. So fantastic land. So is Temple of Mystery. The Scry is very valuable. Alchemist Refuge, so we can cascade on other people's turns and hold up our mana for answers, also very good. Temple of the False God, if we land this early on 5 lands, it can get us a 6 out immediately, very strong. And then a couple of the dual color lands, and then we're playing basics, and you could include your shocks and your fetches and whichever lands you want to include. But just the ones that scry and manipulate the top are specifically good. So keep that in mind. And that is it for Imoti Celebrant of Bounty. I hope you guys have learned something useful about this commander, manipulating the top of the deck, ramping out, the interaction of Emerge and Cascade. It's a very fun deck, and I urge you guys to try this deck out. It's very, very cool, and it can be very powerful. I've had friends of mine fight against this deck when I'm piloting it, and they are just blown away by the explosiveness of some of the turns when the chain cascades and top deck manipulation all line up perfectly. All of a sudden there's a massive board of giant spells. Very, very fun. So check it out, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and subscribe. Leave comments in the comment section for me below. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, and I'll check you guys on the next episode. Cheers.